Hey everyone, Cale here with Sublime Innovations. I know some of you guys are getting your Proto RTAs in the mail right about now. Well, I'm going to do a quick build video, show you the ins and outs of the Proto. Before you start building, you got to ask yourself one question though. You a hot rodder or a daily driver? Alright, so here we are with the Proto RTA. I'm going to take a moment and show you guys what comes in the box. So first things first, you got your tank. We'll get back to that in a second. Extra glass. Also a black Delrin drip tip in case you don't like the stainless steel. There's some of your spare parts. There's an extra O-ring for every O-ring in the tank, some extra set screws, and there's a pair of Clapton coils. We're going to use those here in a minute as well. Underneath the cardboard, got a couple Allen wrenches, an authenticity card from our friends over at Thunderhead Creations, and we got a handy dandy user manual. So a lot of the things that we cover in this video are going to be in the manual as well. I suggest reading the manual. You might learn something new, maybe something we didn't cover in the video. Here's a quick breakdown of the Proto RTA. Up on top, you got yourself a standard 510 drip tip. As I mentioned earlier, there's also a Delrin version in the box in case you prefer it. We've got a top fill design. Underneath of this cap here is your juice fill. So when you're ready, go ahead and just dump your juice on in there and fill her up. On the bottom, we have got the build deck, and it is hidden underneath this retaining ring here. So that's just a little retaining ring with an O-ring seal to keep your juice from landing on your mod. And here's the build deck. I've already got some Clapton coils installed. I'm not going to be covering that in the video. I think most of you guys understand how to install, build and install coils in your tank or your RTA or whatever it is. So in here is the chamber. Now you'll notice there's 4 holes, 2 on either side, and those are your juice flow holes. So that's where the juice comes from the tank and makes it down to your wicks. I'll show you some more details on that later about how to align your wicks so they're properly set up with the juice flow holes. On the outside we've got the airflow control ring. And when we take the tank apart, it comes into a few pieces. This is the top of the chamber section, so you can see where the juice feeds down to the wicks. Got our glass, and we've got our chimney. Alright, our coils are built. Now it's time to ask yourself, am I a hot rodder or am I a daily driver? So what I mean by that is, some people like to vape at lower power levels, some people like to vape at higher power levels. And it's important to know what you're shooting for before you start your wicking. So if I was shooting for, let's say, 50 watts, I would be able to stuff a lot more wick into the coils and into the chamber and not experience dry hits. But if I were to take that same setup and start cranking up the power to 100 watts, 150 watts, it would dry hit immediately. And that's not my particular style. I'm a hot rod vapor, I'll be honest. I like vaping at about 100 watts. So I'm going to walk you through wicking a higher power build. But just keep in mind that if you're only vaping at 50 watts, you can stuff a little bit more cotton in there and not have any problems whatsoever. I got a good piece of cotton picked out here. So with this tank you don't need a whole lot of cotton, and if you vape like I do at 100 watts or more, you really need to be careful about not using too much cotton. If you do use too much cotton, you'll notice right away you won't be able to get a hit without burning the cotton. So you can see here I don't have a whole lot going through these coils, and you don't need much anyway. So grab my scissors here, and you really don't need much on the ends either. You can cut them very short. In fact, you need to cut them very short. It's important to, otherwise it will clog up the juice feed holes and you won't be able to vape at higher power levels. Alright, so that seems like it's about the right amount of wick for a high-powered build. It might actually be a little bit too much. So a general rule of thumb, if you're building for vaping over 100 watts, you want to keep the cotton about just as wide as the 2 little notches on the deck there. So these ones are overhanging just a tiny bit. I'm going to trim them up. Now that we got our coils wicked up, it's time to install the deck into the chamber. So if you notice, there's not a lot of space in here. You got to be kind of careful when you're putting the deck in, otherwise you'll smush the cotton down like that, and that's definitely not what we want. So what I like to do is I like to point the cotton upwards. Just kind of get it pointing in that direction, make it a lot easier to put in. So now we can take it and just kind of maneuver it into place. If this is your first build on the Proto RTA, I would definitely recommend removing the glass section so that you can see down into these holes. Now, it's really important that each one of these 4 holes is covered with cotton. If it isn't completely covered with cotton and there's a way for juice to make its way down, it'll leak on you. You'll have leaking issues. So I definitely like to take the tank off and just take a peek in there and make sure that there is in fact cotton covering each one of these 4 holes and that there's not any open spaces where juice can escape. Now it's time for the juice. Let that soak in for a minute and then throw the tank on and fill her up. Alright, we're about ready to fill up our tank, and there's something to pay attention to, especially if you do high power builds like me where there's not a whole lot of cotton inside of the chamber. When you fill it up, it has the possibility of leaking through and coming out of the airflow holes. So this depends on how much cotton you have inside the chamber. If you have a lot in there and you're only vaping at 50 watts, chances are you're not going to have any leakage while you're filling. But if you vape like I do at 100 watts and you don't have a whole lot of cotton inside of there, there's a good chance that some juice will come out of the air holes. So what I'm going to do is close off the airflow control and fill her up. You can go ahead and fill it up all the way to the top. Okay, now I'm going to carefully open the juice flow control just in case any juice has leaked out of the tank. Doesn't look like it did. Alright, now I think we are ready to vape on it. Alright, we got our Proto all built up and ready to go. I've been vaping on it for a few days actually. So far it's been fantastic. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to hit us up at subominnovations.com. Thanks for watching.